Welcome everybody. This is Denny with my YouTube channel Why Is This True? And joining me today is Karl Mollison from teamarchangel.com. And Karl and I are continuing with our channeling series where we've been contacting people who have passed and successfully gone on to become light beings. In some cases, our subjects have not had a successful transition, and Karl has done what's called a spirit rescue. And then we check back in with them later. Our most recent subject, that was the case. That was Frank Weissner, where Karl performed a spirit rescue. Then a few days later, we had our channeling session with Frank Weissner. So today we have an entirely different subject in a brand new category, and we have 8 questions. And I wanted to go over these questions before we actually go into the channeling session, just to give some context. But before we get started, I would like Karl to tell us about who our new subject is and maybe just give us a little bit of an introduction about what's in store for us today. So thanks, Karl, for joining us. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Danny. I appreciate being here and helping all of the followers of your channel, those interested in the truth of things. This is quite important. It couldn't be more important, as it turns out. So we're going to talk to the ultimate source, if you will. We're going to talk to God herself. And this is something that I've been doing for a while. And it's because it's possible that I do this. I am a channeler. I have been for a number of years. I've kind of worked my way up to this level, not realizing that, yes, it is our birthright, and yes, God is a part of us and always present within. Even the Bible says this. And it's second nature under normal circumstances. And the fact we're not talking to God all day long directly ourselves is because we've been suppressed and subjugated. So that may come up, it may not, but as a channeler, this is something that I can do. I like to use the word creator because it's a little more revenue neutral instead of saying God or Allah. So it tends to trigger people less who've had religious instruction and maybe have a lot of fear associated memories of their instruction and so forth. I see creator as a loving being. This is the force of the universe. It's a loving one, and it's a loving energy. And we are all God's children, if you will. That's really true. And we are all loved and we're all supported. But we're allowed to do whatever we want here. So the kids are loose on the playground. And look what happens. So we've got to undo some messes, and that's no big shock to creator. But it's the subject of our collaboration to help with that process. So we're going to be tuning in. And as a channeler, I also always like to caution people that I've been told again and again, most channelers are being duped right now. They are not channeling who they even think they are. This is a pitfall of doing channeling work. And the reason is there are many voices out there who will step in and serve that role as imposters. And what that does is diverts the person. It takes them out of the stream of knowing into a false source that can be perverted along the way to serve a dark agenda. So that's going to come up, and is the reason for some of these questions. So we'll be getting into that. But I'm doing the best I can to hold that space, to create safety around the work. I do all my work and my healing work through Creator. So that's the best I can do. It's the greatest source of light, and that's why I do it that way. And I've learned that along the way, that I get better results. I get more effectiveness, and things are quicker and more certain. I get more information. It's clearer. It comes faster.
Right.
And that's creator power.
Right.
So we're using creator from time to time as a source of knowledge and insight, and to fact check and to be sure of what we're doing and that we're on the right path.
Right.
So we're going to get into some real issues involving the whistleblower community and what's at stake and how to deal with the many, many voices that are popping up all the time, all having some insight and wisdom, but maybe some false information as well.
Right. Yeah. And then one thing I want to stress too is the context for Karl's work, for the most part, is about healing and helping other people. So it's not just like a self-serving, truth mission thing where he's just collecting up stuff. This is about helping other people, navigate through their situation and finding peace and purpose and solving problems. So that's the context. So it's that part's not revenue neutral. That part is where you get some skin in the game, and if you're not helping people, it becomes evident rather quickly. So the proof's in the pudding. You can judge a lot of this by the fruit. Not so much what's said, but what's happened. What actually happens after it's said, so to speak. So to me, that's the context of a lot of this, is that you're out there not just channeling for the sake of channeling, but doing that for the purpose of helping other people. It's an important distinction. So
yes, and this resource I developed to serve that purpose, because when I have very complicated client situations, I can turn to that guidance directly to get insight about what's truly happening for the person and to help validate what I'm detecting intuitively.
Right.
And it's been an invaluable resource, as you might imagine,
right,
because this is an ultimate source of truth. And it's tough enough doing things intuitively with some of the vagaries and uncertainties and levels of sensitivity and the types of sensations and perceptions that come through to understand and interpret it accurately and know you've got the essence of what you need and not overlook things. There's many, many complications because we're very complex beings and we have many, many components feeding our problems, coming back all through time.
Right.
So this is, it's a complicated undertaking.
Right.
So the more help we get, the better we're going to be at making things better.
Right. So again, what we're going to do before Karl starts is we're going to go through these questions, and I'm going to try to provide some context for the question. And then before I go on to the next one, I'm going to give Karl an opportunity to elaborate or clarify some of the things that I come up with. So I'm going to start now. The first question is, and we're addressing Creator now. We're addressing God or Allah or however you choose to address the Creator of all that is. So the first question is, if you were to be characterized as male or female to assist humans to understand you better, which would be more accurate? Okay, so for me, this has been kind of a discovery issue because my background is Christian apologetics. So I used to study books about how to defend Christianity. And that question was, in all my studies, was never really addressed, at least not addressed in a very positive or thorough way. And it was only until more recently, with the Telos books by Ariella Jones and the Barbara Marciniak series, where about halfway into this book right here, it comes up with a very explicit and coherent explanation of why humans should consider Creator as a female. So I have a little bit of bias in this just from my own study. I think I know what the answer is, but if I don't get the answer I'm expecting, it's okay. Anyway, so Karl, do you have anything to add?
I'm clueless here, other than my past exposure and teaching, and I've asked this question of other light beings, so I may have a good insight about it. I may not. Sometimes we will be told things that fit within our bias so as not to disturb us.
Right.
Their job is not to kick us out of all of our prejudices and our preconceived ideas. We're allowed to be who we are, warts and all. We have to know we got a wart and then ask to have it removed. Otherwise, they won't even point it out.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what to expect. Well, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it will be interesting. And I do have to say is that beyond just reading, reading to get this, I've had an inner sense or an inner knowing. And this has been part of a discovery thing that's been going on for me since 1996. Where the message I was getting back then was that, hey, everything you think is true probably isn't true, so it's time to get to work. And so that's kind of the genesis or the underpinnings of what got me started on this a long time ago. So I did have a sense about this, is that, there was a suppressed goddess energy on the planet that had to be reestablished. If we expected healing, that was going to, in my mind, in my heart, that was going to be a big, huge part of it. So I've always been like pounding on that drum here on my channel and elsewhere for a while now. Okay, so next question. What is the difference between a corrupted source and an uncorrupted source? So as Karl alluded to earlier, is that we're kind of in the disclosure community and whistleblower community. We're inundated with all this different information that's coming out from different sources and whatnot. And one of the things that we've encountered is that light beings do make the characterization between a corrupted source and an uncorrupted source. And that, for me, personally, that was a difficult issue for me, because I'd always looked at it in terms of, okay, well, I've got this piece of information. It came from so-and-so, but I'm more interested in whether the piece of information itself is true or not, rather than trying to establish its veracity based on its source. So when the emphasis seemed to be not so much in looking at it that way, but rather a corrupted or an uncorrupted source, it kind of threw me for a loop, like thinking, well, is that really what we should be focusing on? Shouldn't we be focusing on whether the information itself is true or not? So that's the reason that I'm asking this question, because I do want the terms to be defined. I want to know when source or a light being references someone or something as a corrupted source, what exactly does that mean? And what does an uncorrupted source mean? I want to have a better understanding of that and why it's important. So that's.
Well, I think it's an important topic, as you point out, and this problem exists universally. This is what the religions all wrestle with, that they all have different doctrine, they have different scriptures, they have different beliefs as a result. And the cultural divide that creates is not a trivial matter, especially when people are willing to kill one another over it.
Right.
It was Mark Twain who said over 100 years ago that man is the only animal that loves his neighbor but will slit his throat if his theology isn't straight.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was back in the 1800s, and now we're in the new century here, and it's still very much the case. So the need for truth is universal, and there's value in truth. And as a scientist, I can tell you that what science teaches is all untrue, because we're always just seeing a surface representation of the actual reality of things, especially mechanistically. We just have a very primitive awareness and understanding. And so there's much more that goes on that's beyond our ability to perceive or comprehend. So every paradigm in science eventually gets overturned in some way, big or small. And it's just a fact. So every other kind of knowledge is going to be the same. So our awareness is only so deep. And when we interact even with the light, they can only give us so much because we're not able to absorb more than just what we're open to
Right.
and can comprehend. So we'll see what the big discourse is about this, but I think it'll be helpful.
Okay.
Because we don't think along those terms. And that's a trap. We get so enmeshed with our own dogma and the black or white kind of thinking.
Right.
And that's always a mistake.
Yeah.
Because it always changes. Suddenly black is white now, and then white is black now. And what happened? Well, it's a new generation. We woke up. We
Right.
had a new dawning, and now we see it different.
Right.
There's light in that dark corner, and look what it's spotlighting. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a good question.
Okay. Number 3 is, does a corrupted source depend on the source's intention, and what are the other factors? So this is it's a natural, once the terms are defined, then the next question for me logically was, if a source is corrupted, does that necessarily infer that their intentions are somehow suspect, or is a corrupted source just someone who has good intentions but is just unwittingly passing along things that aren't true? And so if the intention is, once that part of it's clarified, then it would be interesting to know what are the other factors that would contribute to the corruption of that source.
Okay. Well, we'll see. We'll
Okay.
see what they answer.
Okay. And then number 4 is, given that lies that are often buried in vast quantities of truthful information, is it always or usually better to only use the information coming from an uncorrupted source? So here again, this goes back to my original conundrum, is where I am always focusing on the information, not so concerned with its source. I care about the source, but it in comparison to the information, it seems kind of anecdotal from my perspective. But here again, in question 4, we're looking at such huge volumes of information. Is it really better use of our time then if the corrupted versus uncorrupted sources is a more important issue than the information? Should we use the information that's only coming from an uncorrupted source? So this is like, okay, now that we've got the answer, what's the most efficient way to use that information? We've got the answer now. Does that mean that we change our methodology for truth seeking? That's where question 4 comes in for me.
Okay. Well, again, we'll see what the suggestions are and how to proceed with that, because it's a complicated thing.
Okay.
And I know I personally don't want to be a traffic cop.
Okay.
I don't want to be the one to vet everybody, for example.
Okay.
So I don't know who's going to do that, but we'll see what they say.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly the ideal, to have someone who's authoritative.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a gold standard, we think, always with something.
Right.
And who's got all the knowledge and at least enough.
Yeah.
So.
But it's interesting because I'm thinking now, okay, well, we have this authority who's going to come through as golden, but even there, I would think, in fact, maybe the next series of questions that we do should be like, well, somehow I'm thinking like, okay, we found the golden authority, which is there all along, and now here we are like dumb little humans having to verify this again. Duh. But even Source probably doesn't want us to give our power away.
Well, and this is true.
Yeah.
So I can tell you that of those who are watching who are highly skeptical and waiting to see the hidden flaws and so on, you won't see miracles here, because Creator won't do that in the presence of a card-carrying skeptic, because it will disrupt their free will.
Right.
They have the free will and free agency to be a disbeliever.
Right.
So Creator will not produce a miracle in their presence.
Right. And so
it would be easy. It would be easy. Okay, Creator, everybody watching this video, go out and outdoors on Tuesday, some month and day, and Creator will write a message in the sky just for you.
Right.
You'll each get your own personal message. Creator could do that easily.
Right.
But the Creator won't do that because the skeptics are watching.
Right.
And they won't produce a miracle in front of a skeptic. So the situation is very delicate. We're always given just so much. And to the extent we may harbor doubts, we're never given 100% convincing presence and message, because that goes against those remaining doubts, you see.
Right.
So this is not an easy thing that we're asking people to make this leap of faith. But that's why it's always a leap of faith.
Okay.
Because not everyone agrees on what's a miraculous event.
Right.
Some
Yeah.
people, there's a divine intervention. Some people say, well, it could just be coincidence.
Right.
Or maybe it's a misinterpretation. It's like UFOs, was it Venus in the sky?
Yeah.
Or was it an airplane just under unusual weather conditions or something? And
Right.
so.
Okay, so let's see. We're at question number 5. Let's see. Are there circumstances when paying attention to information coming from a corrupted source is a good idea, and can you give an example? So this is like the opposite of number 4. In case number 4, we get an answer that we weren't expecting there, or an answer that I'm not really sure what to say about that, but it just seemed question 5 seemed to be another way of kind of phrasing number 4 in a different way. And especially the second part of it, can you give an example, I think could be very instructive if the answer to the first part of the question is true. So I'll restate that. Are there circumstances when paying attention to information coming from a corrupted source is a good idea? So if the answer is yes, and it may not be, we are asking for an example. So that example could be very instructive to us. So.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good follow-up.
And then number 6 is, would it be accurate to say that no good alien has an agenda to physically appear to humans? And so that I have said in the past, with what I've been learning, and I kind of was thinking like, well, what I have been learning leads me to say that no good alien has an agenda. And so this is kind of a modified version of that question, but the context for that was, to me, about addressing the whole free will issue, and that if an alien was really in alignment with Creator's wishes to honor free will, then they really wouldn't have an agenda with respect to humans. They would be basically wishing the best for us and standing aside and letting us exercise our free will. So that was kind of the context for that question for me.
Yeah, well, that's an insightful perspective, to be sure. So we'll see.
Okay, and then number 7 is a follow-up. If that statement is not accurate, what are good aliens working directly with humans to accomplish? So, and we've kind of touched on this subject with some of the channeling that we've done. In fact, our friend Duke Brickhouse has actually written an article about it on the first series. Where he talked about the Nordics, and there was some confusion, and there still may be some confusion about the Nordics' actual role as it relates to the assistance that they gave, during the war years, during World War II. So that's going to be another interesting question, especially for a lot of people who have been following some of the whistleblowers that we've been looking at. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, obviously there's a lot of people with a stake in this issue, and I don't know how Creator is going to answer this. I can't predict. I know enough from all the things I'm involved with my clients that there are many people who interact with aliens, and various things happen. Some of the people feel they've gained things. So it may be relative. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then, there's always the question of what's best for the greater good of humanity as a whole. So I hope we get a clear answer on that. I think it would be very instructive and very helpful to get some clarification about this.
Yeah.
Because, again, there's so many different messages, so many different voices. And in a sense, they can't all be right. but they may all only be partial truths.
Right. Okay.
So,
All right. Then the last question is, what can whistleblowers and others concerned about the interference by extraterrestrials do to help humanity? And I don't really have too much to elaborate. I think the question stands on its own there. I mean, it's a great finishing question too for this series. I mean, for this video that we're going to do today.
yeah, I think it is important, and it to me it speaks to the fact that we do have an opportunity to actually do something, as opposed to being a spectator.
Exactly.
You know, if this is a land of free will and free agency, what are we doing with our free will and free agency? Are we just sitting in front of the tube? Are we demonstrating in the streets, or are we doing something else? You know, those are choices, and they have consequences. So we'll see what the divine realm thinks.
Okay.
And again, the thing I like about that is it's a direct question about a solution. And the divine realm is not quick to go and tell you what to do. And even the solution you desperately need, they won't just hand that to you, because you're here to learn how to get along and how to make things happen. And if you're not smart enough to ask for help, or ask for it even in the right way sometimes, then you're back on that learning curve, and you're going to get smacked and dragged down perhaps. So that's why I like that question, because it's really reaching out for guidance.
Right.
So I hope we get a good answer.
Yeah, me too. And I do like it too, because it kind of points to action rather than inaction, or the spectator role. I mean, but on the other hand, I mean, I think that some people did come here to watch, and so I'm not gonna. But I think that group might be in the minority. But I don't know. That's just my own personal feeling.
Well, let me throw in my own 2 cents, because it's coming to me, and maybe it's impulse, but anyway, and it may come up from Creator as well, that we underestimate the power of our consciousness to make something actually happen in the physical world. Our thoughts matter. You get enough people thinking about wanting something better, that can have an effect, even if they never leave their home. And never get on the internet and start chattering with their friends on Facebook and whatever. Just the thoughts alone and the yearnings can be answered by the divine realm to some extent. Okay. So that's my 2 cents. Okay. So we'll see.
All right.
They have.
Okay. Well, with that, we will start.
Okay. This is Source Creator speaking.
Thank you for joining us. If you were to be characterized as a male or female to assist humans to understand you better, which would be more accurate?
The distinction male or female is, first of all, not as cut and dried as you perceive, or you have been trained and educated in from a cultural perspective. This, of course, stems from your biology, which is usually clear and distinct, but then branches into many, many aspects of behavior and emotional makeup and appearance and on and on. As a divine being, we incorporate all the potentialities. So we have within us the entire repertoire of traits and characteristics. It is much like the facets on a great gem that has many colors, many attributes, and depending on which facet you examine, will see one thing or another. And of course, the blend can be quite detailed and intricate in having many, many subdivisions and degrees of expression. So, in the big picture of your question, we do, in fact, see and encourage expression of the male and female characteristics in answer to the yearnings of human for support, guidance, and assistance with the world and its doings. The course of events through history has also been heavily influenced by interlopers who have a quite dominant or male type energy as you associate with that gender. And so this has all been tainted by your cultural experience and the characteristics found within current male and female beings. The distinction is a useful one because both genders have their utility in the success of physical humans in living on Earth and dealing with the nature around them. So in the roles carved out in having to do child rearing and so forth, those things that fall to the female gender are not only traditionally associated with nurturing and having a ready access to loving characteristics and their free expression to encourage the young and foster their development in a loving cocoon that shelters them from the harsh realities of life until they are ready to assume responsibility for their own welfare. And then to have the harsher, more commanding and domineering instincts within the male gender expressed more fully, to impart to them the ability to defend the home, to stand up for principles in a wider circle and be more of a free agent, not tied to the home place in having to care for and nurture the young. And so they have a differing role to play. This is only a situational constraint. When not constrained by the physical characteristics of a physical existence, the array of expression can, in fact, be quite extensive and vary tremendously. And this variation can be altered and adjusted and decided on in the moment by the light being, to one moment be male in leanings and in the next moment be female in leanings as they wish. There is a soul makeup that figures into this as well. The makeup of the soul has within it an imprinting of characteristics. And this is the reason for the manifold differences among individual human beings. It is not all the particular genes bestowed on them through their ancestral lineage, although that does have an influence. And it is not only the cultural environment and the particular nature of the family, friends, and acquaintances, and the broader society influencing each person to mold and shape them into the expression of their being. There is an innate characteristic set, and this was an act of creation to make them a certain way. So each being has an infinite array of possibilities, as does Creator, but each has a home setting or template that is a unique set of characteristics and attributes that was predetermined by yours truly in creating them as individuals. If this were not so, everyone would start out as identical beings. and in each lifetime would take on certain characteristics temporarily, but then would revert to the sameness. It was not our desire to have everyone be identical. Even within the animal kingdom, you see there is variety. There are differences and nuances of behavior. Some animals are friendly, others are not. Some are quite nurturing for their young, some are less so, and so on and so forth. Some are loyal to their mates, some are less so, even in those species associated with lifelong mating. There are departures. And so this is the backdrop. There is, therefore, a tendency in certain individuals to be more of a male type characteristic, and some who are more of a female type characteristic. And this is the calling of the soul, and so it has a familiarity, and it is a state of being that is quite comfortable as it fits them, and they are able to excel in particular when resonating with those characteristics and extending them forth into the universe as they go about their business. But these are not absolutes. So what you're seeing and reacting to with your question about male versus female is the contest that has been ongoing, and the dominance of male energy in century after century of conquering other nations, subjugating them, looting and pillaging to acquire other beings' goods, and taking slaves, and especially the females, for subjugation. And this is by virtue of greater muscle mass and less compassion, not attributes that have a spiritual level of value. So it is natural after such a prolonged period that things would begin to move in the opposite direction, as the state of nature as well as the overall karma of the universe is to always seek balance. And after a period of exaggerated expression of one characteristic, there needs to be a renewal, a replenishment, and a reemergence and expression of the opposite. And so there is overdue now for quite some time a situation with a new awareness, recognition, and embracing of the feminine. This is a quite beneficial emergence because it is the antidote for the intentions of the conqueror and to subjugate other people. Beings of compassion will do neither. And so the love energy is more readily available and expressed through the female physical human. And so it is natural in seeking a better world order and balance to admire the feminine and encourage the expression of the feminine. And so this is what people see when they look to the heavens and ponder the issue about God's gender. It is the association of the feminine quality with the expression of love, which is the greatest force of the universe. The greatest power resides within love, and the consciousness that carries and expresses love and brings forth new expressions of love within the physical realm. So this puts the female on a pedestal in comparison to male. And that is quite deserved because of the central importance for love as a motivation in all things. But it is not meant to be the domineering choice or the dominant force. It is meant to be preferred in the expression of one's own inner self as a way of operating. And that is a different thing than having a female elected as a female official to use female precepts and prefer female associates and subordinates in positions of power and so forth through a hierarchy. So we can talk at quite some length about this, but we trust this gives you a good overview that we have both characteristics and prize them both. And we do wish the yearnings of human to be answered in the highest and best way. And right at the moment, there is a love deficit. And so the feminine energy is quite important and quite needed.
Okay, thank you. The second question is, what is the difference between a corrupted source and an uncorrupted source?
This is a very, very deep question beyond what most people would expect. This, in essence, is the dilemma of life as well as the opportunity. All have a beginning, all have a destiny, all have a journey, and all have many stops along the way, many obstacles, many diversions, many false choices that lead them to dead ends. And so as each individual soul meanders through existence in trying things out and engaging in many adventures, there are many opportunities to sample and try things on and to make decisions anew about how to invest one's energy. So the broad answer to the question is all are corrupt because all are incomplete. So if you approach any individual and expect information or guidance or support from them for an undertaking of your own, they will only respond in proportion to their alignment with what you seek and what is highest and best for you as a partner, if only for the moment. And so depending on who you interact with, they may be wholly unsuitable as a partner. They may be wholly dangerous as a partner because their intentions may be the diametrically opposed opposite to the goals you seek. And they may seek to interfere and perhaps even destroy you if they can. So this is not an easy question to answer, for all are incomplete, all are experts on some things and in ignorance about most others. So everyone has shortcomings, everyone has limitations. So this is always something good to keep in mind, that all are learners and all are here temporarily, and in particular with human are only awakened partially and have very limited experience to draw on. Those who are highly intuitive can access past and future. This gives them an advantage in having a somewhat broader perspective, but they too can fall prey to limitations imposed by their own agenda, stemming from emotional conflicts within that limit them, or difficulties because of ego involvement and the desire to have power over others. This can befall even the spiritual leaders. as you have seen time and time again, these human pitfalls are always factors involved in making a judicial assessment of the trustworthiness and appropriateness of a collaborator in seeking knowledge and information. So there are no easy answers because there cannot be an absolute category of suitable or unsuitable. It's always relative to the issue and questions at hand.
Okay. Does a corrupted source depend on the source's intention? What are the other factors?
This as well is a very good question, and there are a range of possibilities here. The people you seek to interact with, for the most part, are genuine in their motivations and sincere in wishing to share something important and useful to others. And they are divinely inspired as well to do so. They are living good lives and wanting the best for humanity. All have limitations and shortcomings, and there are limits to their reach and their ability to discern and to interpret their information and to convey a true meaning in what they see and perceive. So the duty falls on the receiver to make some sort of judgment and assessment. This is not always easy, particularly with those who are sincere in what they are about. There are relatively few who are deliberately attempting to deceive, although they are out there as well. There are many agents of the government and the military and intelligence organizations worldwide who are engaged actively in spreading disinformation and propaganda and intending to infiltrate various groups and to spread doubt and discord and disinformation among them, as well as to gather intelligence for nefarious purposes and so forth. So, of course, it goes without saying these are all untrustworthy sources, and it falls to you individually pursuing the truth to watch for signs and follow your intuitive guidance in making some judgment. This is more easy to do than in the case of a genuine individual who is heartfelt in their desire to serve. But the bells will sound and the alarms go off when they speak an untruth for those who are truly listening with their highest awareness. So this is a dilemma that all have to face because the level of corruption is quite severe at this stage. There are many, many dark forces working against humanity actively to corrupt, to mislead, to misguide, and to disinform, and with the intention of diverting attention from the truth and leading people to squander their time and resources and energies on false leads, false directions, and in some cases, a worse fate. There are many ways this is done. It is done across the board to every living person through relentless mind control that takes place energetically, through energies beamed planet-wide. They also attempt to disrupt the divine realm's communication and energetics, seeking to reach individuals to help their uplifting and support and guidance. They are less effective in this, but nonetheless, the attempts are being made. It does not take much to distract a person, to disregard a fleeting thought that comes in via the heart when there are so many things to fear. Fear is the great enemy and will mislead and will render a person incapable of following their higher guidance, because this triggers the survival instinct, and then people go into fight or flight mode. And that's not the time to be meditating and listening to your spirit guides or creator, for example, who will always be a subtle voice and will not be ever acting through fear. And in fact, their communication turns off when fear is the dominant energy within the individual. So we resonate with loving kindness, and that is the way to reach us and communicate with us. But it shows the size of the problem with humanity rushing about and in turmoil, with so much discord being suggested and promoted across the board. And that is yet another example of the interference, where all of the media conspire to whip up agitated group about any number of issues, and they work both sides of the room, so to speak. No matter what your leanings in terms of politics or religion or national interest or any other category that distinguishes an individual or group from others, they will serve to incite fear, incite mistrust, and inflame passions and areas of discord and disagreement, to make enemies worsen in their divisions and their hatreds of their opposite number. This is no accident. It happens with great vigor and great glee by those behind the scenes inducing this. So this is what you are working against, the mind control already in place with everyone who thinks they are serving the cause. And this is not always easy to overcome. This takes some work oftentimes to undo. There are some people less inclined to be manipulated in this way, and they are more reliable sources. But there is no easy way to tell, and no absolute test for who is trustworthy and who is not. For it depends on each and every fact and figure they may wish to share, whether it is true or not. The channelers are a special problem because they themselves are usually corrupted by the dark ones. They know the channelers are a high risk to them by having access to divine truth, and this they wish to prevent from happening at all costs. So they will target all channelers relentlessly to subvert them and to find ways to begin to partner with them themselves. And this takes them out of the action, because then they are talking to an extraterrestrial source and not to a divine being any longer, but to an imposter who pretends to be the divine being. This is hard to accept and even understand for many, especially with religious training, because they cannot envision a world in which someone can pretend to be God or pretend to be an archangel and get away with that, because God would certainly strike them dead on the spot. This is not so, because we are quite careful and scrupulous in following our own rule about non-interference in human affairs. You are in charge of your world. You have the word of law. You decide what happens. If you reach out to us for help, then we can come to your aid. and there are rules about that as well. But if someone pretends to be us, that is their free will choice, and we cannot stop them directly. So this is one of the road hazards you must deal with. It is no different than having human criminals out and about who may be con men and wish to sell you a bill of goods, so to speak, and take advantage, take your money, and give you something phony in exchange. And you only find out later that you have been duped. So many channelers, a high percentage, more than 90%, are listening to a false prophet, an imposter, and this corrupts everything they do. The reason this is difficult to detect is this is done in a very clever way to masquerade as the desired target or source by knowing the party line expected and hewing to the persona of the true target insofar as they are capable, and they are quite clever in doing this. And this allays suspicion, because a high percentage of what they say will be truth and will be divine truth and in alignment. And it is only over a period of time, as falsehoods start to appear in the narrative, that they may be discerned as being untrustworthy. So this creates many, many complications, and this will be a serious dilemma for all in your group of followers who are seeking those who have the inside track and can spread the actual reality with inside knowledge. This is not easy to come by with certainty, and is a problem you will have to learn to overcome as you go.
Okay. Questions 4 and 5, I think, have been adequately addressed. We can revisit those in the later session if needed, but I think questions 4 and 5 have been answered already through your answers to the previous questions. I'm going to skip ahead to question 6, and this question is, would it be accurate to say that no good alien has an agenda to physically appear to humans?
Yes, this is quite accurate and will be shocking and a great disappointment to many. For others, it will be a reason to dismiss all we had said as being the very thing we purport to expose, namely that we ourselves are an imposter in this exchange, because they have come to believe in their alien friends as being allies and working to help humanity and promising great events to come. This, unfortunately, is another ruse, and it is another way they operate, appearing in the physical to human beings as friendly and as wishing to help, and with a good story about how they are going about that, and generating a feeling of trustworthiness and acceptance, and often awe and loving feelings in the bargain. This is a form of mind control. Whenever a physical alien appears, it begins to instill feelings and perceptions within the human subject to engage their trust, to disarm them, and make them highly interested and accepting of their presence as a great honor and a promising source for future gains. And so this is a subterfuge and a manipulation from first to last. We can tell you that at present, there, in fact, is a divine admonition for non-interference by extraterrestrials who are of the benevolent sort. And the reason is to allow the humans to carry the load, as was the intention of this undertaking from the very beginning. This serves humanity in the end because it is no different than engaging in a race to see who can run the fastest, but then at the final stretch coming in and giving someone a motor scooter to ride and they become the winner. And so that would subvert the gain, would subvert the true meaning and accomplishment of going the distance and creating the heaven on earth that is the future intention here. So the benevolent extraterrestrials are doing some things behind the scenes in a higher level operation to begin to affect the electromagnetic grid of Earth, for example, to remove some of the suppression, but not to partner directly with humans as allies in a physical sense. And so at the moment, this is a very, very clear dividing line between who is trustworthy and who is not. Any physical alien you encounter will be an imposter pretending to be a being of light or assistance for the benefit of humanity, but engaging in a falsehood. So this is something that deserves to be spread and will ruffle many, many feathers and will incur the wrath of many individuals who have come to believe in their extraterrestrial friends. But this is unavoidable, and as you are asking direct questions about these matters, we cannot hide this truth from you. So the consequences of spreading this information will fall to you and to us as well. But we are in a safe place and you are not. So we appreciate the seriousness with which the information may have implications for your safety even, and your future acceptance among others. But this is something that will need to be sorted out in order for things to move forward more aggressively once again. The people who are engaged with the physical extraterrestrials also mean well, but all are being influenced without their awareness quite heavily with an inner programming to make them complacent and to enhance and cement this alliance on a deep, energetic, and belief level. And this does not serve them. So this is yet another distinction that needs to be made. The benevolent extraterrestrials do serve as sources of knowledge and wisdom for certain channelers. And there are some who can be trusted with these messages, many who cannot. They are the source, for the most part, of messages coming through and relating to extraterrestrial origins and matters. So they are allowed to impart certain energies to assist the divine agents who are impulsing humans with encouragement and support as they have uplifting thoughts and intentions. And so some technical things are being supported by the benevolent extraterrestrials as assistants. The crop circles are another example of high-level messages, and these are genuine for the most part, coming from benevolent extraterrestrial sources. And the reason for this is that the high-level beings are in another dimension altogether, and they are not compatible with the earth plane and do not wish to come into this realm. So this is the way they can interact through energy, through their consciousness, not as physical beings. And this is another reason for the actual distinction. And so the link up with the advanced extraterrestrials will be done in a non-physical meeting. It will be done energetically and through the imposition of imagery done via technology to allow a communication in a familiar way to you through images of their appearance and so forth, but will not be done by beings coming down a stairway from a UFO and shaking hands. So this gives you some idea of the difference between the lofty and the ones who are part of the dark corruption that is abroad in the land and having a huge influence on all earth doings.
Okay. Well, here again, question 7 has been answered from the answer to question number 6. So I'm going to skip ahead to question number 8, which is our final question. What can whistleblowers and others concerned about the interference by extraterrestrials do to help humanity?
We, as well, are very glad you are asking this question, for there is much to be done. And there is much each and every person can do. We cannot overstress the reality here that you all have a direct stake in the game. Your destinies individually will depend entirely on what you do or do not do from this point forward. If you align with love and the light, which is the source of love, you will have a much better time, a much better future, and a much better progression than if you do not. Being passive and ignoring the problems around you is making a choice. This will keep you on a much lower plane of existence, and your future will be on a much lower plane of existence. So this is a call to action. You are asking in earnest, the two of you, and so we are answering in earnest, not just for the two of you, but all who are fortunate to hear these words. This is the time, this is the moment. This is your call to action, to step forward and do something to help yourselves and your fellow humans, as we have outlined in other discussion here today. You are in charge. You are in charge of your kingdom. You are free to choose or not choose everything that happens. So you can move forward with vigor and with firm intention to right the wrongs, to make things better, to seek a better world for all. Or you can do nothing to assist the progress of humanity and be self-serving and self-indulgent only through passivity, and without even realizing that you are facing a dark road. So the way you can put this into action, this call to action, is by having a conscious awareness and a conscious intention for human betterment, to look at everything that happens around you through a lens of critical assessment. Is this something that serves love? Or is it something that serves another agenda? And each human action can be seen through that lens as moving forward, standing still, or moving backward on the love line, so to speak. It is loving energy that will turn each human into their full divine being when they leave the earth and return to the light. This is your birthright. You are all divine beings, and you have the love of Creator within you. You were created to be who you are, and to be special, and to have those special facets. But you all share your divinity, and the divinity is the essence of love, with its many, many means of expression. As you work forward in your journey, if you're choosing love in all you do, you will add to human progress. You can do so intentionally by having the conscious choice to live through love, live by love, and to ask for love from above, from the divine. This is where it comes from. It flows through you. It is a divine gift, but it can be closed off. And this is what the interlopers are doing relentlessly within the human community. Both the extraterrestrials and the many, many hordes of dark spirits who serve them, and all are working to disconnect you from the divine realm and to shut down your connection even to your higher self, the gateway to your soul level and the fullest of your divine expression. This leaves people disconnected from the ability to love, and as they lose their compassion and concern for others, they become self-serving and easily manipulated to be aligned with sources of power that would give them some gain over others and some power over others in service to the self. To avoid those pitfalls, one must align with love. And this supersedes the ego as well, for the ego is a basal level of self-interest and self-motivation that has its place and has its value in a world of organisms competing for a foothold and for some advantage that serves them. But when it exceeds the call of love, it becomes a negative. So the expression of love is the first way you can participate. This will be noticed, and every act of love, every loving thought can be amplified and added to by the divine realm. This furthers the gains. It furthers the spread of love energy and raises the vibration of the planet accordingly. The planet is thirsty for love and needing human love to become more and more healthy. This is the element that is missing. It is not your pollution that is damaging first and foremost. It is the lack of love you have for the planet that is causing problems within Gaia. The second thing you can do is ask directly for help. This has a time-honored history in the implementation of prayer to the divine. It was notion and an inspired instruction in the way of things that were always intended to be a matter of course. The ability to dialogue with Creator, as you are witnessing here, is everyone's birthright. Everyone should be doing this and having access to divine level help and wisdom and insight on tap. The fact it is not is because of the level of disconnection and corruption. So the return to that state of being is the future for all who are able to throw off the oppression. If you call on the divine realm to assist, you will get an answer and you will be assisted. You will not see a spaceship land on your front yard and benevolent ETs emerge to embrace you. You will be further inspired. You will be further encouraged. You will be uplifted and your vibration will be raised. Your health will improve. Your emotion and your emotional life will improve. And you will be more effective in all you do that works for the greater good and for your personal good as well. For after all, you are a member of the greater good. You are a member of the human community and you have no less standing than any other. By raising up one, you raise up the all. You are all interconnected. You are all affected by one another. Everyone who falls off the path will drag you down in some way. Everyone who returns to the path will raise you up in some way. You are all brothers and sisters. You are all worthy. And the least you perceive among you has no less standing with us than you. And so all are worth saving and all will be saved. It is in your best interest to do this sooner rather than later. And it falls to you to make this happen. This is the way of things at the moment and will not change anytime soon. There is much more to be done by the humans themselves to make this a successful experiment and undertaking in the development of the divine human expression of a free agent. And this has tremendous implications far beyond what you see in the human realm. This is creating a new potential that will spread through all of the universe. And you, as humans now, will be in that vanguard who will spread the light in new ways, never experienced before anywhere in the universe. This is the potential you have to achieve. It is up to you. You are being assisted and supported. We are here to help you, and we will. But we must follow your lead. You need to have a belief this is possible, that it will happen, that you are worthy and deserving. And if you can hold that level of belief, it will be so. To the extent you doubt and have fears and feel unworthy and undeserving and it is beyond your capability, we must stand aside. If you have such limitations, you can have healing assistance through your human healers. There are many who seek such help and find they are able to reconnect with the divine realm as a consequence of removing their limiting beliefs that are the source of the doubts and fears. There are many avenues to follow to become successful in this quest. The tools are available to you, but you must act. So that is our message to you, and we wish you to know you are all loved and cherished and divinely supported. We see the grand future that is there for you, each and every one of you who choose to move towards it.
Thank you, Creator. With that, I'm going to let Karl come back.
Okay, well, there was a lot of information given to us there. I have heard a lot of it before. Some of it was new. This gender thing is something I haven't probed much into, just a little bit with my Archangel friends. I'm keen on the idea of healing. Personally, I'm one of these folks who are on that path, and I have spent a lot of time and effort developing a divinely inspired lightworker healing protocol that addresses many, many of these issues: the personal problems, emotional difficulties, disconnections, energetic misalignments, karmic impediments from our past doings and our failings.
Right.
And to encourage the uplifting of our energetics and doing very deep and broad soul healing work. And also to remove extraterrestrial interferences of all kinds: genetic distortion, manipulation, implants, the covert mind programming of the subconscious level, and so forth. Those can be removed.
Right.
But you need divine help, by and large, to do that,
right.
Unless you're an advanced healer and use your own energy effectively
right.
to target.
And
that is easy to do. It's easier to remove the extraterrestrial handiwork than one's own subversion of the self, because we have divine power over ourselves. And the divine realm even won't countermand our own orders to diminish and demean ourselves if we choose that.
Right.
So that takes a lot of healing work to deal with those human emotional issues, but that's doable.
Right.
The other stuff is actually simpler, but you need to know how, you need to know what to ask for. So we need to get going with this and put this into practice.
Right. Yeah, knowing what to ask for is a very important point, and it's a personal issue for me, because I didn't know that in my case the problem with alcohol had anything to do with it, with an entity attachment. If someone told me that 15 years ago, I was like, what? That just sounded like gibberish to me. But it turns out it was that was the turning. That was the one piece of information that made all the difference in the world. And I imagine there's a lot of other similar situations to that. So people don't know what they need. They know they need to help, but they don't know what to ask for.
Well, that's a perfect example for this discussion, because what you were dealing with was a contest between consciousnesses of two different beings, wanting to control your body and what it does.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just you anymore. There was this other being present in your energy, wanting to be in charge. So the divine realm looks at this, and we've got person A and person B. It doesn't matter to the divine realm who's in physical and who is in spirit form. You're both a soul-based being wanting to do stuff. And you each have free agency and free will. So you're in an arm wrestling situation.
Right.
And so if you don't know that's happening, good luck. Your force of will and your therapy and all those things you might turn to aren't going to affect that other being.
Right.
They may help you in how you think, but if a dark spirit's there or something, forget it.
To me, it's like an indicator of how much we still need to learn and how productive that learning may be. So having an open mind and allowing yourself to discover these new things, so you can address issues like that and get on with the program here, and that's why I was very happy with the answer to that last question, because pursuing it in that fashion could answer the question, well, what am I going to do? Because that's a very common question. People find out about the behind the scenes goings on that's created the world that we live in now, and they go, okay, now I know what's going on. What do I do about it? And that's the big question, and and we're all capable of finding out that answer for ourselves, which is very different for everybody. It's very different. There's a lot of things you can do that are solutions.
Yeah.
But there's no silver bullet either. I mean, if there was a silver bullet, it would be even easier for us to be controlled. But because we're so unique and we have so many different ways of addressing this problem, it's a very hopeful scenario, because you can devise a plan of action for yourself that is not only very unique, but probably very powerful.
Yes, and that's a very insightful statement, because we do have power. Our consciousness individually has power and strength.
Yeah.
And it's often what you believe and what you put your faith in that will have the power to help.
Exactly.
Because we can do it in different ways and through different tools and different means and different allegiances and alliances. We could do it through a religious framework if we really resonate with that.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Or in groups or whatever. Yeah.
Or as a group.
Yeah.
Group work very, very powerful.
Right.
And the reasons is you have the shared benefit of the collective belief level added together.
Right.
So I've been shown this about healing, that if your client believes only 10% that there's a divine realm that could help, and 90% they doubt, they're not going to get divine help and divine healing because they're saying no to it.
Right.
Default.
Right.
This is maddening, but this is the way it is. I assure you.
Yeah.
So
but
as a healer, if I believe 99.9999% that I can talk to Creator and enlist Creator to come and help my client, then my 99.9999%, I'm just assuming I'm only human still. You know? If that client's got 10%, we're there.
Right.
You see?
Right.
So this is a factor. There has to be a certain amount of belief. You can't just make a casual prayer and call up a miracle. You have to have a high level of belief and a strong intention to make that happen.
Right.
So this isn't necessarily falling off the log. It's not simple and easy. It will take some commitment and some dedication and building up the ability to open the heart to the love that's needed here. You have to learn to love what you're doing and love the people around you who you want to help, and even the enemies. This is very insightful, divine, inspired teaching. You know, loving the enemy, because what that does, it raises you up above them and their power. It puts you on Creator's wavelength. You want to be protected from the ETs, start loving. That's the end. And loving God and loving life and loving Gaia.
Right, the earth, yes.
This can make you invulnerable. This can make you untouchable.
Right.
So there's much more than people would assume. And it's from so many centuries of weakness and failure at doing it.
Right.
And that's not an accident.
No.
That's been part of the subjugation to corrupt religions and the religious teachers and on and on.
Well, we'll keep doing this, and we'll turn the corner, and I invite everybody to leave their comments here, because we are for sure going to be following up with another session like this, and so I'm serious about it. So if you have questions, please put them in the comments section, and we will consider them. They might get edited a little bit or combined with other questions just in the interest of time. But I want to thank you again, Karl. This was Karl's idea to do this particular channeling, which once again was a home run. And I want to thank you again, Karl, and thank everybody for watching, and we will be back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.